I found the receipt tucked inside her coat pocket while looking for my phone charger. A hotel room, 2 nights, the same weekend she told me she was visiting her college roommate in Boston. My name is Eric Lansing. I'm 37, a civil engineer from Columbus, Ohio. My wife's name is Karen. We'd been married for 9 years when I found that receipt. That was exactly 1 year ago. I remember standing in our bedroom, holding that small piece of paper, reading it over and over like the words might rearrange themselves into something less devastating. The Marriott, downtown Boston. Room 314. 2 nights. The dates matched perfectly with the weekend she'd packed her overnight bag, kissed me goodbye, and promised to say hello to Rebecca for me. Rebecca, the college roommate I'd met twice at previous gatherings. My hands were shaking. Not from anger yet. From the sudden, sickening realization that I'd been living in a different reality than the one that actually existed. How many other weekends had there been? How many late nights at the office? How many girls' dinners that ran until midnight? I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed we'd picked out together 5 years ago, the bed where we'd had lazy Sunday mornings and difficult conversations and made promises about forever, and I waited for her to come home from work. When Karen walked through the door at 6:30, I was still sitting there. The receipt was on the nightstand. She saw it immediately. Her face went through a series of expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, panic, and finally something that looked almost like relief. Like she'd been carrying something heavy and was finally allowed to set it down. "Eric," she started. "Don't," I said quietly. "Just don't start with a lie. I can't handle that right now." She cried when I confronted her. Real tears, the kind that make your whole body shake. She collapsed into the chair by our window, her reading chair, where she'd spent countless evenings with novels and tea, and told me everything. His name was Daniel. He worked in her office building, different company. They'd met in the lobby coffee shop. It had started innocently, just conversations during lunch breaks. Then drinks after work. Then more. She told me it meant nothing, that it was a terrible mistake born from feeling distant from me, from feeling like we'd become roommates instead of partners. She said she'd been feeling invisible, like I'd stopped seeing her as anything other than the person who shared my space and my routine. And the worst part, some of what she said was true. I had been distant. Work had consumed me for the past 2 years, a major bridge project that required 60-hour weeks and constant stress. I'd stopped asking about her day, stopped planning date nights, stopped doing all the small things that keep a marriage alive instead of just functional. But I hadn't cheated. I hadn't looked at our problems and decided the solution was another person's bed. She begged for another chance. She said she'd already ended it with Daniel, that she'd been trying to figure out how to tell me, that she was terrified of losing me. She promised therapy, promised transparency, promised that everything would change, that she'd do whatever it took to rebuild what she'd broken. I should have said no. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to pack her things and end it right there. But we had 9 years together. 9 years of shared memories and inside jokes, and a life we'd built brick by brick. We had a house with a mortgage and joint bank accounts and friends who thought of us as a unit. We had a future I'd always imagined. Kids someday growing old together. All those cliches that feel real when you're living inside them. So I said yes. God help me, I said yes. So we went to therapy. She switched jobs. She showed me her phone whenever I asked. And slowly, painfully, I started to trust again. Not fully. Never fully. But enough to function. Enough to smile at dinner parties. Enough to pretend we were healing. By the time Lily announced her engagement 8 months after Karen's affair, things between us had stabilized into something that resembled our old normal. Not quite the same. The innocence was gone, the ease of trust, but functional. Comfortable even. Karen seemed genuinely excited for Lily. My sister is 29, 7 years younger than me, and we'd always been close. She works as a pediatric nurse at Nationwide Children's Hospital, has this infectious optimism that makes everyone around her happier. Even after seeing some of the heartbreaking cases that come through a children's hospital, she still believes the world is fundamentally good. She'd been dating Mark Hendricks for 3 years. They'd met at a friend's backyard barbecue, hit it off immediately, moved in together after a year. Mark was a financial analyst, good-looking in that clean-cut way, always knew the right thing to say at family dinners. My parents loved him. I loved him. He felt like the brother I never had. We'd watch football together, help each other with house projects, grab lunch when our schedules aligned. When he proposed to Lily on a beach in Florida, she called me crying happy tears. Eric, it was perfect, she sobbed into the phone. The sun set and the ring, and he remembered the exact words I said on our first date about wanting a partner, not just a boyfriend. Karen and I went to their engagement party a month later. It was at my parents' house, the backyard decorated with lights and flowers. Karen genuinely seemed happy to be there. She hugged Lily, admired the ring, volunteered to help with wedding planning. I want to do this right, Karen told me in the car ride home. Be there for your sister. Help her have the perfect day. Show your family that I'm committed to being better. I appreciated that. I really did. Because part of rebuilding trust meant reintegrating into normal life, showing that we could function as a couple at family events, that her mistake hadn't poisoned everything. So when Lily asked Karen to go dress shopping, Karen said yes immediately. When she needed help organizing the bridal shower, Karen took charge of decorations and games. When Lily had a breakdown 3 weeks before the wedding, because the caterer had messed up the menu, Karen spent 2 hours on the phone fixing it. The wedding was planned for late September at Evergreen Vineyard, a sprawling property 2 hours outside Columbus with rolling hills and rows of grapevines, and a renovated barn that Lily had fallen in love with the moment she saw it. Karen and I drove to the vineyard Friday afternoon, the day before the wedding. We'd booked a room at the bed and breakfast next door. The weather was perfect, the kind of day that photographers dream about and brides pray for. That night, there was a rehearsal dinner in the vineyard's tasting room. 20 people, immediate family and the wedding party, eating pasta and drinking wine and toasting the happy couple. Lily was radiant, laughing at every joke, holding Mark's hand, looking at him like he'd hung the moon. My father gave a toast about how Lily had always been his sunshine, even as a colicky baby who wouldn't sleep. My mother cried and said she'd never seen Lily so happy. Mark's father welcomed Lily into their family with the kind of warmth that made her tear up. Karen squeezed my hand under the table. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "This is what we should remember, this feeling." I squeezed back. For a moment, everything felt right, like the past year had been a detour, but we'd found our way back to the road. The next day, the ceremony was at 4 o'clock, so we had the whole day to relax, help with last-minute details, soak in the celebration. By 3 o'clock, guests were arriving. The ceremony began at 4:15, fashionably late, because the photographer wanted better light. Lily walked down the aisle on my father's arm, and I swear every person there held their breath. She looked stunning in our grandmother's restored lace gown, the one she'd talked about wearing since she was 12. Mark's eyes filled with tears when he saw her. The officiant, a friend of theirs who'd gotten ordained online, led them through vows they'd written themselves. Lily promised to love him through chaos and calm. Mark promised to be her partner, her best friend, her safe place. They exchanged rings. They kissed. Everyone cheered. In that moment, everything was perfect. The reception started at 5:30. The barn had been transformed. String lights crisscrossing the ceiling, long tables draped in white linen, centerpieces with those origami cranes Karen had spent hours folding. Karen looked beautiful. She wore a navy dress that we'd picked out together, her hair pulled back in a way that showed off her collarbone. Throughout dinner, she was engaged and present, laughing at jokes, complimenting other guests' outfits, helping the elderly woman next to her cut her meat when arthritis made it difficult. Around 7:30, the band switched to danceable music. Mark and Lily had their first dance, spinning slowly under the lights while everyone watched. Then my parents joined them, then Mark's parents, and soon the dance floor was full. I danced with my mother. I danced with Lily. I danced with Karen, who rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for giving us another chance. Thank you for believing in us." Around 8 o'clock, I realized I needed to use the restroom. When I came back, Karen wasn't at our table. I figured she'd gone to the bathroom too, or was outside getting air, or chatting with someone I hadn't noticed. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Then 20. I started doing laps, checking the bathroom, walking the perimeter of the barn, stepping outside to the patio where smokers had congregated. No Karen. I asked her friend Michelle, who was in the wedding party. "Haven't seen her in a while," Michelle said, sipping champagne. "Maybe she went to her car?" 20 minutes became 30. A small, cold feeling started growing in my chest. The same feeling I'd had that day a year ago when I found the hotel receipt. I was standing near the bar, debating whether to call her phone when Lily found me. My sister's face was completely white. All the joy from earlier had drained out of her. Her mascara was smudged like she'd been crying, but her eyes were dry now, just shock and something else I couldn't identify. "Eric," she said, her voice barely audible over the music. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. I need you to come with me. What's wrong? Are you okay? The coat room, she whispered, and her voice cracked. I think Karen and Mark are in the coat room. The world tilted. Everything went quiet despite the music, despite the laughter, despite the celebration happening all around us. What? My voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I saw them. Lily was shaking now, her whole body trembling like she was freezing. About 20 minutes ago, Karen said something to Mark during the toasts. He got up, walked toward the back hallway. A minute later, she followed. I didn't think anything of it at first, but then they didn't come back. So I went to check, and Eric, the coat room door is locked. From the inside. I knocked. No one answered. The coat room was at the end of a back hallway, past the kitchen, away from the main reception area. It's where guests had left their jackets and bags, a small room lined with hooks and shelves. There was no reason for anyone to be in there during the reception, let alone with the door locked. I don't remember walking there. My body moved on autopilot while my brain tried to process what Lily had said, tried to find an innocent explanation that would make this okay. Maybe they were planning a surprise. Maybe Mark was helping Karen with something. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for why my wife and my sister's new husband were alone together in a locked room at their wedding reception. But I knew. Deep down, beneath all the denial and desperate hope, I knew. The hallway was dimly lit, quieter than the main space. I could still hear the band playing, muffled now, something upbeat that made the contrast even sharper. Lily was behind me, and I realized other people were following too. Her maid of honor, my mother, a few guests who'd noticed something was wrong. I stood in front of the door. My hand hovered over the knob. Karen! I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. Silence. Then rustling. Then low voices, urgent and hushed. Karen! I said again louder. Open the door. More rustling. The sound of fabric moving. A zipper. Footsteps. Then the lock clicked. The door opened slowly. Karen stood there. Her navy dress was wrinkled. Her hair, which had been perfectly styled earlier, was disheveled. Her lipstick was smeared, a shade of red I'd never seen her wear. And behind her, trying to straighten his tie and tuck in his shirt, was Mark. They weren't even trying to come up with a story. They just stood there, frozen, staring at me like deer in headlights. Like children caught with their hands in the cookie jar, except this wasn't innocent or forgivable or anything resembling a simple mistake. This was my wife and my sister's husband, hours after his wedding ceremony, in a locked room together with their clothes disheveled and guilt written across their faces so clearly that even someone who wanted to believe the best would see the truth. Behind me, I heard Lily make a sound I'd never heard before. Something between a scream and a sob, a noise that came from somewhere so deep and broken that it made my chest physically hurt. How long? Lily's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through everything. Mark opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Lily, I can explain. How long? This time she screamed it, and the music stopped. The celebration stopped. Everyone went silent, and suddenly there were more people in the hallway, crowding behind us, trying to see what was happening. Karen spoke instead, her voice flat and hollow. 6 months. The words hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. 6 months. 6 months while Karen attended dress fittings and bridal showers. 6 months while Mark planned a honeymoon and wrote vows. 6 months while I went to therapy and tried to rebuild trust and believe my wife when she said she'd changed. 6 months while Lily glowed with happiness and planned the future with a man who was already betraying her. My mother gasped. My father appeared at the end of the hallway, and when he took in the scene, his daughter's devastated face, Karen's smeared lipstick, Mark's guilty expression, something in his kind, gentle face went dark in a way I'd never seen before. Lily walked up to Mark slowly, deliberately. She was still in her wedding dress, this beautiful lace gown she'd dreamed about for years. Everyone in the hallway held their breath. I thought she might hit him, scream at him, fall apart completely. Instead, she reached down and pulled off her engagement ring and wedding band, rings that had been on her finger for less than 4 hours, and dropped them on the floor. They made small pinging sounds as they bounced on the hardwood. The marriage is over, she said, her voice eerily calm. It never happened. It was a lie from the moment you said, I do. Then she turned and walked back toward the reception hall, her dress trailing behind her, her head held high despite the tears streaming down her face. What happened next is something I've replayed 1,000 times, still not quite believing it was real. My father, this gentle man who coached Little League when we were kids, who helped neighbors fix their cars and never raised his voice, who cried at sentimental commercials, walked up to Mark, grabbed him by the collar of his tuxedo, and physically escorted him down the hallway toward the exit. No yelling, no threats, no violence, just absolute, cold finality. The kind of disappointed silence that's worse than any anger could be. Mark tried to resist at first, sputtering excuses, but my father's grip was iron. He walked him straight through the reception, past the stunned guests, past the band that had stopped playing, past the beautiful cake no one would eat, and out the main doors. My uncle went outside with them. Later, he told me my father threw Mark's car keys into the vineyard and told him to walk to town. You're not welcome here. You're not welcome in my daughter's life. If I ever see you near her again, the police will be involved. Now leave. Inside, the reception had devolved into chaos. Guests were standing in confused clusters, whispering, checking phones, not sure whether to leave or stay. The band packed up their instruments in awkward silence. Lily's bridesmaids huddled around her in the bridal suite, all of them crying. Karen tried to approach me. She'd followed us back into the main space, and now she stood a few feet away, mascara running, hands shaking. Eric, please, she said. I know how this looks, but I can explain. Explain what? I didn't raise my voice. I felt eerily calm, like I was watching this happen to someone else. Explain that you're exactly who I was afraid you were. Explain that I wasted a year trying to rebuild something that was already completely destroyed. It's not like that. It wasn't planned. It just happened. 6 months ago, I said. It just happened 6 months ago, and then it kept happening. Through therapy, through all your promises, through helping plan my sister's wedding to the man you were sleeping with. She flinched. I never meant for it to go this far. I tried to end it. I did end it, but then what? You missed him? You couldn't help yourself? Is that what you're going to say? I don't know. She was crying now, full sobs that shook her shoulders. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I keep doing this. Eric, I love you. I do. But I also don't. I held up my hand. Don't you dare say you love me. You don't hurt people you love like this. You don't destroy them twice. You don't sleep with their sister's husband on her wedding day. Around us, people were starting to leave. The parking lot lights had come on. Someone had turned off the string lights in the barn, and suddenly everything looked dim and sad, like a party that had ended hours ago, even though it was barely 9 o'clock. Karen reached for my arm. I stepped back. I need you to leave, I said quietly. Go back to the bed and breakfast, pack your things, and leave. I'll sleep somewhere else tonight. Tomorrow, I want you out of our house. Eric, please, we can work through this. We worked through it once, I said. I gave you a second chance. I went to therapy. I did everything right. And this is what you did with that chance. So no, we're not working through anything. We're done. I walked away from her then, walked straight to the bridal suite where Lily was surrounded by her friends. When I opened the door, everyone looked up. Lily's face was streaked with tears, but she wasn't crying anymore. She just looked empty. I sat down next to her on the couch and didn't say anything. What could I say? I'm sorry my wife destroyed your wedding. I'm sorry I brought a cheater into our family. I'm sorry I didn't see this coming. We just sat there together while our parents coordinated getting guests to leave, while the caterers packed up untouched food, while the night that was supposed to be magical turned into something we'd all spend years trying to forget. Karen left the bed and breakfast that night. I stayed in the bridal suite with Lily and my parents. None of us slept. We just sat in shocked silence, occasionally making tea no one drank, staring at walls, trying to process what had happened. At one point, around 3 a.m, Lily spoke for the first time in hours. I knew something was off, she said quietly. About 2 months ago, Mark started being weird about his phone. Protective of it, and he'd come home from lunch breaks smelling different. Like perfume that wasn't mine. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was just stressed about the wedding. But I knew. That's not your fault, my mother said firmly. None of this is your fault. I should have trusted my instincts. Then what? I said. You'd have canceled the wedding 2 months ago instead of yesterday. Either way, he's the one who betrayed you. He made the choice. Multiple choices, over and over. Lily nodded but didn't look convinced. I understood. I'd spent the past year questioning every instinct, every moment where I'd felt something was off but talked myself out of it. Sunday morning, I drove home alone. The house felt different immediately. emptier, even though Karen had only taken a few things. Her coffee mug was still in the sink. Her book was still on the nightstand. The origami cranes she'd folded were still in a box in the closet, meant for the wedding that would now never be completed. I called my buddy Jason. "I need your truck and your help moving Karen's stuff out." He arrived 30 minutes later. I told him everything while we boxed up Karen's clothes, her books, her toiletries. He didn't interrupt, just listened and helped pack and occasionally shook his head in disbelief. We loaded everything into his truck. Karen texted me asking where to pick up her things. I told her Jason would drop them at her parents' house. I didn't want to see her. Didn't want to hear more excuses or apologies that meant nothing. Monday morning, I called a divorce attorney. Margaret Chin, recommended by a colleague who'd gone through his own messy split. I told her everything. The first affair. The attempted reconciliation. The second affair with my sister's husband. The timing of it all. "Ohio is a no-fault divorce state," she said, "which means we don't need to prove wrongdoing. But given the circumstances, the affair, the brief marriage with your sister's husband, the timeline, we can use this to expedite proceedings and ensure the division of assets is fair." "I don't care about assets," I said. "She can have whatever she wants. I just want this over. I understand the sentiment, but you should care. This is your financial future. You said the house is in both names." "Yes, but I've been making most of the mortgage payments." She contributed initially, but after she switched jobs, her salary dropped. "Then the house should be yours. I'll draft paperwork reflecting that, along with a clean split of other assets. Given that she won't contest, and I doubt she will, given the circumstances, we can have this finalized in 6 to 8 months. It took 8 months of paperwork and mediation, and dividing up a decade of shared life. Karen didn't contest anything. The house became mine. We split savings accounts. She kept her car, I kept mine. We had no kids, no pets, no complicated custody arrangements. Just the simple, sad dissolution of promises we'd made to each other. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in late May. I didn't attend the final hearing. Margaret handled it remotely. I was at work when she texted. "It's done. You're officially divorced. Are you okay?" I sat in my car in the parking lot and felt nothing. Not relief. Not sadness. Just a hollow emptiness where something used to be. Lily had her own journey through the wreckage. The wedding, of course, was canceled. Deposits were lost. Gifts were returned. Explanations were given to confused relatives who'd seen the photos and heard rumors, but didn't know the full story. Mark tried calling her for weeks. She blocked him on everything. He sent letters. She returned them unopened. He showed up at her apartment once. She called the police, and he finally got the message. His family was mortified. His mother called to apologize, crying so hard she could barely speak. His father sent a check to cover the wedding costs, which my parents refused. His sister, who'd been Lily's friend first, cut off contact with him completely. According to mutual friends I no longer talked to, people who'd been at the wedding, who'd witnessed everything, Mark moved to Denver within a few months. Took a job there and left Columbus entirely, unable to face the social fallout of what he'd done. The thing no one tells you about betrayal is how long the aftermath lasts. The event itself, finding the receipt, opening that coat room door, those are moments. The living with it is years. Lily threw herself into work. 12-hour shifts at the hospital. Volunteering for holidays. Taking extra training courses. Anything to stay busy, to not think, to not feel. My parents worried. I worried. But grief doesn't follow a timeline, and neither does healing. As for Karen and Mark, I heard through the grapevine that they'd tried making it work. After the dust settled, after they'd both been properly ostracized by everyone who knew them, they'd apparently decided they might as well be together. It lasted about 3 months. Melissa, a friend of Karen's who'd been at the wedding, told me the details over coffee. I hadn't asked, but she clearly wanted to share. They moved in together, Melissa said, stirring sugar into her coffee. Got an apartment in German Village. But apparently it fell apart fast. Karen accused Mark of flirting with their neighbor. Mark found messages on Karen's phone from some guy at her gym. They were both paranoid, both accusing each other constantly. Turns out when you build a relationship on betrayal, you can never really trust each other. Poetic justice, I said flatly. They broke up badly. Screaming match in the parking lot. Police were called. Last I heard, Karen moved back in with her parents, and Mark's still in Denver. I felt nothing hearing this. No satisfaction, no vindication. just a distant acknowledgement that their story had played out exactly as anyone could have predicted. Lily slowly started to heal. It took time, real time, not the quick bounce-back people hope for in movies. But gradually, she started smiling again. Started going out with friends. Started believing that what happened to her didn't define her future. And me? I learned something I should have learned the first time Karen cheated. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Not their apologies. Not their promises. Not their tears or their therapy or their temporary good behavior. Their actions. What they do when they think no one's watching. What they choose when choosing means everything. I still think about that day sometimes. The golden light during the ceremony. Lily's smile before everything fell apart. The moment I realized I'd been living with a person I didn't actually know. Some things, once broken, aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be learned from and left behind. I sold the house 6 months after the divorce. Too many memories in those walls. Bought a smaller place across town. Started over with furniture that had no history. Got a dog. A rescue mutt named Cooper who greets me like I'm the best thing in his world every single day. I'm not dating yet. Maybe someday. But right now, I'm learning to be okay alone. Learning that my worth isn't defined by whether someone chooses to stay. Learning that the end of something, even something I fought hard to save, can also be a beginning. Lily's doing the same. We have dinner every week now, just the two of us. We don't talk about Karen or Mark anymore. We talk about work and movies and Cooper's ridiculous antics. We talk about the future in small, hopeful increments. Last week, she told me she's thinking about taking a trip to Iceland. Something she'd always wanted to do, but Mark had never been interested in. I'm going alone, she said. Just me. No compromises, no checking with anyone else. Just doing something, because I want to. That sounds perfect, I told her. And it did. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic or calculated. Sometimes it's simply living well. Moving forward. Refusing to let the people who hurt you take up any more space in your life than they already have. Karen and Mark made their choices. They'll live with the consequences, the reputation, the broken relationships, the inability to trust even each other. But that's their story now. Not mine. Not Lily's. We're writing different ones. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.